Welcome home to USA Global TV and Radio, a place where dreams take flight, with authentic storytelling, diverse perspectives and meaningful conversations, where global stories unite and bridges are built beyond all borders. Discover world-class education, entertainment, hope and inspiration. Together, we're building bridges worldwide. Subscribe to our channel, USA Global TV. Download our app, USA Global TV. Be our guest or join our team. Visit usaglobaltv.com. Thanks to our founder and executive producer, Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck. Music score by Yeffy Tang from Cloud Road Music. Voiceover artist Mike Porter. Creative direction by Paul Garcia. USA Global TV and Radio, your home for global connection. All rights reserved. This video and its contents are the exclusive property of USA Global TV and Radio. Unauthorized use, duplication or redistribution in any form is strictly prohibited.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome home to USA Global TV and Radio, where we proudly provide world-class education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. I'm Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck, and it is my absolute pleasure to be here hosting this show with the star of our show, Caroline.heward. And today's show is The Listening Mentor. This is a program where we provide education, tips, and information so that you can have better relationships, deeper connections, and more authentic conversations. Our topic today is one that really hits close for me and maybe for some of you out there as well. It's the ripple effect of unresolved conflict in work and in relationships. So joining me is our resident therapist in-house here, Caroline.heward. She's joining us from outside of London. She's known as the Harley Street stress expert, and she helps people bust their stress. She's also the host of A Woman's Prerogative, parts 1 and 2 on Mondays. You can go over to our YouTube channel and see all of the episodes there. And she also is an expert presenter on Talking Heads and the star of this particular show, The Listening Mentor. Let's welcome Caroline. Hello, hello.
Woohoo! That's a long introduction.
Yes. Well, it's all true, and it's great to have you. And by the way, welcome to your followers who are watching on your Facebook and LinkedIn. Hello, hello. So, Caroline, before we get into your background in today's topic, what is it about being an elevated listener, being someone who really appreciates how powerful the gift of listening is, that brings you to do this show every other week?
That's an amazingly powerful question, Dr. Jacalyn, and thank you for the question, because I've considered, why am I doing this many times? And the reason I'm doing this is that when I consider and come up with the topics, we are conflicted many times with different things that are going on, and we can think we're listening and we can think that we're having a conversation actively, and yet we're not. And this can happen in our everyday living in terms of our families, our work, and our colleagues. And I think that it's really important, because if we don't listen, then we miss out and we miss things. And for doing the show, it's a reminder for me, and it's a reminder for others, because we can get caught up in drama, in dynamics, other people's dynamics, other people's drama, other people's lives, and we're not listening in all aspects. And elevated listening is not just about listening to the words that they say, it's about listening to their tone, the physiology, looking at their eyes and seeing if there's any gestures there that are saying a different thing to what they're actually verbally saying. And I feel it's very important. Otherwise, we get into huge conflicts internally as well as externally when we don't actively listen. And I'm very passionate about this, because I frequently feel that we can get lost and caught up with the dramas of things that happen in our everyday world. And so this is a good reminder for me and for our viewers and for ourselves, in terms of when we get caught up, that it's okay to stop, to pause, to listen actively. And when we do that, we feel much more relaxed, and we also sleep better because we've given our whole attention to the other person, and we've given ourselves to the other person and to ourselves. So I feel it's extremely important to be the best that we can be and actively listen, even if it is something that we're doing for ourselves.
Brilliant, Caroline. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And yeah, it's always good to reflect and say to ourselves, okay, it's a new year. I did this last year. What am I expecting this year? And to really look at how we're spending our time and does it serve us? And I know for me, I still find a couple of things that I've really been working on. Even though there are unresolved issues, especially with having a lack of heat and lack of consideration and lack of being treated like a human being, I always say to myself, I need to conduct myself as a lady. And I think since I took Philip Sykes' course, the Train the Trainer for the Power of Etiquette and Manners, I realized that any one of us can become unhinged over any reason. And when we act in a certain way, we carry ourselves in a certain way, I feel like whether or not someone else is showing us respect, we can respect ourselves because we didn't lose control of our emotions. And someone said to me, and I'd love to have you comment about this, that it's important to keep your head where your feet are. So right now we're doing this show, and you have a lot going on in your life that could easily be distracting to you. And I have some things going on with me, but yet we're here today showing up as true professionals. What are your thoughts about keeping your head where your feet are?
Oh, that I actually said something similar to this, not quite in the same words, with somebody that had booked in to see me next week, and I hadn't received the deposit. And so I questioned it and followed up with a call and a message. And I got a response back saying that he'd had a family member taken very ill, and his head has been all over the place, was his words. And he said, I couldn't be with you and be with my nephew as my head is all over the place. And so the fact that you've said this, and it's two aspects of the same thing on the same day, I only had that call today. So that person isn't coming in because his nephew is extremely unwell, and he feels that he needs to be fully focused on his session with me. So I feel that when you're fully present, so head and body in gear in terms of being with the person, then you get the most from it. I've had, and I'm going to give a for instance, because I had a long time ago when I was dating a guy, he had his phone with him and was constantly on his phone messaging and texting. And by the end of the hour, we'd had a couple of glasses of wine, we'd had a really nice lunch, but he didn't really talk to me. He just asked me what I wanted to drink and what I wanted to eat. He went and ordered it. And the rest of the time he spent on his phone. And I didn't feel that I had lunch with him. I felt that he'd had lunch with his phone and I was there observing him. And I made comments about it to such a point that he got upset and said, nobody else makes any comments. And I says, well, if you're going to do that next time, I'm not going to arrive. I'm not going to come because you don't need me to be here because you're with your phone. And so that's what I feel, head and body being engaged and being fully present, because you can be in your head somewhere else and in your body with the person, but you're not really with them. And I personally dislike that immensely. And I demand people to be, even in a call, fully present with me because I feel it. And if they're cooking or doing something else, I notice it and I feel it because I literally stop everything that I'm doing to be with them. And it frustrates me when I'm hearing them in the background doing other things.
I completely agree with everything that you just said. And I've had similar experiences where you're with someone, you don't get to see, sometimes you see people on a regular basis, and sometimes it's a brief amount of time. And I always cherish that time. And I think to myself, how can I show up at the highest level? And when someone takes their phone out and whatever it is that they're doing, they don't realize how disrespectful it is to the other person. They're basically saying, listen, I'm here, but I'm not here. you are important, but you're really not, because whatever's going on over here. And I think also as a therapist, you could speak to this as well. Sometimes people are hiding in their phone because they don't want to deal with whatever the situation is. Can you talk a little bit about that? And is there a name for that?
I'm not sure if there's a name. I'm sure Generation Alpha will have a name for it because they're doing it so often. And our Zoomer generation, our Generation Z, are doing it as well. So I'm sure that there must be a name for it. And I'm going to look that up and inquire on with those younger generations when I'm next out and about. But there is a school of thought that when you're on your phone or when you're in your phone, that you look busy. And I feel that it's a little bit like when I was working in corporate and we would be in our computers and we would be there staring at our screens and we would look busy and occupied. And so we would look like we were being productive. And it feels to me, and it's only an observation, that it's a similar vein to that now, instead of being on the computer, a lot of people do work on their phones, especially if they've got smartphones, which most people will have. So yes, I do feel that sometimes we hide not to be with the person and to almost be saying, without saying it, that they're more important and what they're doing is more important than being with you and being fully present with you. And I do want to share a little story. Actually, I had a client that arrived when I was working in London, and he was about half an hour late. And when he arrived, he says, I've just got to answer this message. It's a really important deal. And I said, okay. And an hour later, he was still doing messages. And I turned around and said, this is my time that you're taking and you're doing messages. And his comment back to me was, my work is really important. And I said, then we should have cancelled this meeting, this session. And he said, no, this is important too, but I need to do this first. But it was on my time and in my space. So he brought all of his stress with him without me being able to handle it. And I didn't know how to handle it. So after that particular experience, I now suggest if somebody's visiting me physically to ensure that their phone is off, not on silent, not on vibrate. And I insist that it's off and not in the room if it's on silent.
And how does that go over with people? Are they usually receptive, or are they kind of angry, or do they lash back out at you?
Well, I do it in a confirmation email. And so then they have time to sit with it. And if somebody starts arguing with me, I said, I don't have a problem with you having your phone on silent, but it can't be in the room.
Excellent. That's good advice.
Because if it is in the room, then, we're all human, aren't we? And we do get distracted. I mean, it's a very human thing. We can't help it, can we, to check the phone? My phones are never in the room. And, even when I'm doing my broadcasting, I don't have any other tech apart from the tech that I'm working with, the screen, my laptop and me and the lights in operation. I don't have anything, any distractions. As you know, you've tried to call me on a number of times and you can't get to me because it's not in the room with me. and I'm proving, I'm actually showing that I don't have anything else going on, but we are so easily distracted that I wouldn't want to be causing them an issue with them being distracted in the middle of a session and them having to leave, which has happened in the past. So we all learn by, what happens and how can we handle it better or differently. And when clients have said, I've got to go, and it's like halfway through their session, my wife keeps calling me, I've got to leave. I don't know what it's about. I need to message her. and that just creates a whole level of anxiety that they came to see me to get rid of the anxiety in a meditation.
It's counterintuitive.
So it's now, I just say, I really want you to have the best possible meditational experience. And the only way that we can do that is if the phones are off. And I understand if you don't like to switch off your phone. And if that's the case, more than happy about that. It has to be on silent and not in the room, so you're not distracted, because you're paying me a lot of money to come and see me to help you with your problems. And I'd love to help you, but I can't help you when your phone is your distraction.
And what could be the case is that that phone is a big part of why the relationships aren't going so well, or there are challenges. So let's move into the actual topic about the ripple effect. So something happens in the morning and then you go to work, and typically what could happen is you see somebody and you just unload on them, blah, 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 blah. And of course, this comes back to part of what you and I teach, which is setting boundaries and asking permission. Did you ask the person if they were open to hearing you just dump on them, if this was a good time? And then we might not get the response that we want from that person. And then we go on to the next person, or maybe we sit at our desk and we just start calling people. I got to call somebody to tell somebody. So as you know, I don't have heat. There's no heat in this studio right now. My hands are like ice. And this has been going on since November. And I don't call anyone up to just dump how I'm feeling, because it's nobody else's problem. It's my problem to get it resolved. And I use what Philip Sykes talks about all the time, which is the 6-second rule, where you take 6 seconds and pause before you actually speak. Sometimes it could be an hour. Sometimes you might have to go dark overnight before you actually do anything. But what are your thoughts about when we take something, an issue, a challenge that's we're not feeling too good about, and then we just start calling people, or we just find somebody to dump it on when we leave that situation, maybe our home, and we're going to work? What are your thoughts about that? Is that okay?
Well, no, is the short answer to that. And again, we're human, so these things can happen, especially if it's a crisis situation, personal situation. For instance, somebody's being dumped, their marriage is folded, or there's their personal home is on fire. These are big things that sometimes we don't think, and we just need to unburden. And I agree with you that it isn't right, and at the same time we're human, and so to err is to be human. But it isn't nice for the person at the other end, and I've done it myself when I've been in a challenging situation, until I've grown through it and learned from it. And I also want to say that I've recently read an article about single people, that single people are more emotionally tolerant and much more emotionally aware and able to handle their emotions much better than people in relationships. And I found it quite interesting. As I was reading through it came up with the points that you've just made about the fact that when you're alone, you can take the space, the 6 seconds that you've just mentioned, or the fact that I feel that when we're alone, and it really resonated with me reading this article, that we tend to take our own counsel. We tend to go silent, go within, deal with what's coming up, and then respond accordingly. Sometimes you might get a message that when you're experiencing this drama or this chaos, that if you responded to it there and then, you wouldn't be responding to it in the right way, or because you're highly emotional. And so when you're single and you haven't got to respond or answer to anybody else, I feel that it is absolutely brilliant for the single person to be able to take that space. But as I said again, we are all human, and sometimes we will just reach out because we need to, or because there's a feeling of disconnect that we need to connect with someone. And so it's not okay. And at the same time, it's important to acknowledge what the situation is for the person, and allow them some space, especially if they're going through a huge crisis.
Absolutely. And there are a number of crises going on all over the world, and people are really challenged in a lot of ways. So I always think, how can I give someone grace? And again, just going back to my situation with the heating, I've treated everyone with respect until today when I'm going to file complaints. But I'm still going to do it in a proper way so that I can live with myself in terms of how I'm behaving. And I would love to have you share, you help people bust their stress, right? So people get very stressed out about relationships, about situations. And I feel like finding the solution is what I focus on. So for example, and then I'm going to come back to you, today the fire alarm went off before 8 a.m. And of course I went and looked at the windows. Were there any fire trucks? Because the fire department is close by. And I didn't see it. Do I see people like out front, like screaming? Is there anything? And I didn't see anything. So I thought, I'm not going to call anyone. I'm just going to remain calm. I'm going to look around and decide what are the things I would take. What if the stairwells are backed? Like, what is my plan? And I came up with a plan. And I thought, well, based on everything that's going on in California with the fires, I know how quickly they go through places, especially high rises. So I came up with a plan. And I thought, I've had a great life. And if this is the way I'm going to go. And I just was but I didn't call anyone. And then when it finally got resolved, I didn't start screaming and yelling. And then I just thought to myself, what is the solution? This is the situation I'm in right now. What am I going to do? So when you have a solution or you look for the solutions, I feel that gives you a sense of calm and peace. What are your thoughts? And is finding a solution an effective way to deal with problems?
Yes, is the short answer to that, because Dr. Jacalyn, when we move into the space of crisis, we can either go emotional or we can go practical. And when we go practical, we step into a very resourceful state of beingness. And if, for instance, my boiler collapsed and stopped working, I have a fallback plan in terms of I have insurance for my heating and hot water. And so I would immediately call the insurance company and sort of, even if you can call them at like 2 and 3 in the morning, which I think's amazing. And I've been with them for years. And for those kinds of things, like the heating, if my fridge freezer broke down, I would be completely, because I'd be flooded with the fact that it's quite a big freezer. And so that would be a challenge. If the washing machine stopped working, I know that these are smaller things, but these are things that for peace of mind, and that's what insurance says, for peace of mind, that I will be okay. So I would naturally just go into the fallback plan of being consciously and practically aware. And so when you go into that state of action, then you become very resourceful. In fact, more resourceful than if you'd gone into your emotional state. And I feel that going practical and dealing with the problem from a practical place is a good place to go initially. And then when you've gone through the practical steps and you've done what you need to do, then it's okay to be emotional, to let out the emotion. So I'm not saying don't be emotional. I'm not saying don't feel if there's a challenge that's difficult to handle, but going practical and handling everything logically and practically and physically is the best way to be to solve the problem. And it also gives you clarity. It gives you resolution. And when you're dealing with other people, asking them for their help, you are much more approachable than if you're screaming and shouting down the phone, because they won't be able to help you if they can't understand what you're saying. So to be calm, to be rational and practical means that the external people that you're speaking to and you're reaching out to will be much more inclined and much more participating in providing you a solution.
I love that, what you just shared, and specifically when we are screaming and yelling, people cannot understand us. That is an excellent point. And I know in dealing with the cable company, for example, I don't know how it is over there, and also the situation with the heat. And anytime you have to call customer service, there is the likelihood that you are going to get artificial intelligence and that you may get frustrated. So what I say to myself, like, for example, where I live, there's artificial intelligence that answers the phone. And this robot is really good. You can say exactly who you want to speak to, and the robot will not put you through. So I would find myself getting frustrated. Just put me through. So now I know, I expect when I call, the robot's going to answer and the robot's going to give me a hard time. So I figured out what to say so the robot will actually transfer me to a human being. Because me getting frustrated and all emotional and yelling at artificial intelligence is ridiculous. But I think we've done it. When you call an 800 number for something and you cannot get a person. Way back in the day, I used to sell phone systems for AT&T and Siemens, and we used to sell automated attendant. It's going to make your life so much easier. But I think we really miss having human beings. And so that in and of itself, when you can't speak to a human, could be very frustrating. So something I'd like you to share, if somebody's calling a customer service center and they're getting a person who has nothing to do with the situation, right? It's the person who's getting paid to answer the phone. Maybe they've had training on how to deal with irate customers. But by screaming and yelling at that person, how is that going to impact your resolution of your problem? Because is that person answering the phone, are they now more motivated to help you, or are they frustrated?
Well, no, that they're very little in terms of motivated to answer and deal with your query, because they are just answering the call. And yet we are human, and sometimes we just can't help it. And I'm not saying that, it doesn't occur, because it does. And what we tend to do is we vent our anguish and our frustration onto the very person that calls to help, which is kind of bizarre. And at the same time, that's a human thing, because that person is the first person to pick up the call, or the first person that we're in contact with. And so all the frustration that's built up just pours out of some people, and I call it a venting. And when you vent at the person, they're less likely to want to help you, or less inclined to want to help you, because you've not been making much sense. They're only there answering the call, and they can't help you with your problem if you're screaming and shouting and they don't quite hear what you need or what your problem is, because all you've done is vent at them. And so it's important, especially if it's AI that's put you through when you're going through to somebody that is at the end of the call, wanting to help you in that space of your crisis, your situation, is to almost breathe, stop, and then take a pause and go into the place of they're hearing this for the first time, and they genuinely are picking up the call to help you. And so speak to them as a human being. And if then they're not helping you, or you're getting, and it's a frustrating experience, that's okay to get frustrated. But if you are frustrated and venting to begin with, then it doesn't work, because the other person doesn't understand what your needs are, what your problems are. So it's much better to be calm, to be focused, and to be very calculating in terms of the information that you give. Give them the facts rather than the emotion. And when you've given them all the facts, you can then turn around and say something like, I'm sure that you can appreciate this is a very frustrating situation. I'm really angry about the situation, rather than being very angry at the person.
So true. And I think what would really be of value for the rest of the show, because if you think about it, there are people who've lost their homes. There are people who are confused now about the gender status. There's only 2 genders now here in this country. There are people going through a lot of things that can be not just frustrating, but life-changing. And many times we just want someone to help. We just want someone to listen to us. So imagine somebody loses their home and they have to call an insurance company, and they've got to go through their whole story over and over and over again. I think that is something that really bothers people, that really gets them, because they speak to the first person, then they have to transfer to the second person, then the third person, and then maybe they find out they don't have insurance. And I mean, these things are going on right now. And so it might sound so easy to do, to keep your calm. If you lost your home, if you lost your identity, there's a lot of things that can impact us. How can we, knowing we don't have a home, knowing they're saying we don't have insurance, whatever the case is, how can we still rise above our emotions and our anger and our resentment? Why did this happen to me? You answered the phone. You work for the company. Why can't you help me? Right? You can see it building and building and building. So realistically, the 6-second rule, all these things we're talking about, putting the emotion at the door, are these really things that we can do in a crisis situation?
Yes, because if we don't get anywhere. And that will be a default mechanism in terms of not getting anywhere and not getting any resolution. So to find resolution, no matter what the crisis is to do your best to take a breath, stop, pause, and say almost matter-of-factly when you're speaking to the person, because when you give them the facts, they are then in a position to be able to help you. If you are emotionally high, and I'm not saying you wouldn't be, but when you are emotionally high, the intelligence goes down and almost your speaking becomes incomprehensible. And so even though it is challenging and difficult, it is important to, these are strategies, these are ways to handle and to get resolution. And I certainly remember when my dad passed away, and I was making calls on the day that he'd passed away, and I just had to give it all up, to give up the emotion and just make the calls and give them the information. And it was very, very challenging. And when I was moving, when I was selling my London property to move further north into the UK, when I'm thinking that I'm about to complete and I'm waiting for a call from my solicitor and then to say, yeah, we've done it, we're complete, which was, so I was very much in limbo and couldn't let other people know in terms of the parking suspension and in terms of the people that were packing and moving me, the removal company. I kept them all on tenterhooks because I was on tenterhooks because each time I thought I was completing and I thought that, yes, I'm leaving, I wasn't, because something else cropped up either on my side or on the other side of the property that I was buying. And I really had to keep my cool. And I was dealing with so many different people that I managed to keep all the plates spinning because they all wanted me to complete, and all these different bits of paperwork and different things came in right at the last minute. And it was very, very stressful, but I breathed, I slept, and I ate the whole thing. I couldn't function and do anything else because it was a month later that I actually moved. And it was much, much more challenging because I couldn't complete on anything. I couldn't make commitments to other people that were serving me. And it was a highly volatile situation for everyone. And right at the last minute, I lost it. And I said, what is going on? Why hasn't he got this paperwork sorted? And the estate agent turned around to me and she said, that is not going to help. She said, let's take the emotion out, let's deal with the paperwork, and then let's celebrate, and then we can be emotional. And that was a point where I'd had lack of sleep, lack of food, and lack of motivation to keep going. But it was like the last hurdle, and the estate agent stepped in and made it happen. But I was on the verge of losing my buyer and losing the sale at the same time and being in no man's land. And that to me was quite a crisis because everything was laying on the fact that that would all tee up. And I remember talking to you about it, saying, that this was affecting things that I was doing and commitments that I'd made to yourself and other people. So it is critical to keep your cool, because if you don't, other people will notice, and other people are less likely to help you get to the end result and get a good resolution for everyone.
Thank you for sharing your story with us. I really appreciate that. I think what I'd really like people to take away from the show, and have your input as well, is that we're all going through something. You're going through something. I'm going through something. There are people who are going through things that are possibly at another level. And I think if we can open our hearts, if we can be kind, if we can be compassionate and not judgmental and just be a good listener, that might help somebody. It might save someone's life. It might do something that you can't even imagine, because right now, the world is crazy and people are going through a lot of change that they didn't ask for. And how can we help people? So as we close out, I'd love to have you touch on, when you are being a good listener, sometimes we have the tendency to want to solve the problems, but maybe that's not what the person needs or wants. And maybe we're not even capable of solving the problems. We just have an opinion because we're so smart. We're so knowledgeable about what everyone else needs. How do you feel problem solving for someone else has an impact on the other person?
Thank you, Dr. Jacalyn. That's a really, really key question. It is a natural thing to want to help the other person, to alleviate their symptom of pain, their symptoms of frustration, and their anxiousness over a situation, because we are naturally wanting to be a human being to another person. So we listen compassionately, and then at the same time, we don't want them to suffer. And I think that's a human thing, that we don't want to hear that somebody's suffering, and they are. And so my invitation, and it really is that, it's an invitation for you to be the best that you can possibly be for that person, is to be open to hear what they have to say. If you're open to hear what they share, sometimes they only need to be there saying what they need to say. So they only really need you as a sounding board. And some people will go through the whole story where they've been in a crisis situation. And so you immediately think, oh my gosh, sort of, did you do this? Did you do that? And this is because we're actively listening. We're really hearing what they're saying. And then they might turn around and say, just listen to what I have to say. I haven't finished. And if it's somebody that tells the story of the drama of the crisis, and then they continue with what happened after the crisis and the fact that they've resolved it, you don't know as the listener, because you're with them on every beat and every step of what they're saying. And it is really easy to step in and go, oh my gosh, are you okay? Did you get hurt? Did you go to the hospital? It's so easy when we are listening and we get caught up in the story of what they're sharing. And I feel that we are being human because we are getting caught up. And sometimes it might be worth letting the person say everything they need to say, because they've got to get it out. And when they've said everything, then it might be that you're in a celebration of the fact that they've dealt with a crisis. They just wanted to share with you that they've handled a crisis and they're now in a better situation.
Absolutely. Thank you. That was a terrific way to sum that up. I think something else I just want to share with people, in my situation with not having the heat, I can't tell you how many people have reached out to me to tell me what I should be doing. If I were you, I would do this, 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 and this. Thank you very much for sharing. Thank you very much for sharing. And then people get angry with me. Why aren't you doing this, this, and this? And part of the reason is I actually believe in the goodness of people. I believe people will do the right thing. And if they're not doing the right thing, I don't want to take my blood pressure to another level because I have high blood pressure. I just want to remain calm and in control. And nobody has to tell me the steps that I have to take to get it resolved, because I know what the steps are. I'm just giving time for people to do what they need to do. So as of today, there is no more time. But my point being, think about how we're showing up for other people with you should be doing this, as though I'm an idiot, as though I don't know what the options are. Of course I know what they are. I research all the time. But to me, I look at it, and this is what I'd love to have you comment on. I look at it from a different perspective, which is they're afraid for me, or they're worried for me. So I give them that grace. And I would like people to think about that too. If someone's offering these solutions, is it because they really care about you and that they're concerned, or is it because they're a know-it-all? Caroline, what are your thoughts? How can we tell the difference when someone has good intentions? Not that it makes it right, but how can we tell?
Well, if they are reaching out and saying, oh, have you done this? Have you done that? They have got, I feel, good intentions. As you've probably noticed, I'm not giving you any solutions when I drop you messages. I just say, I trust that your heating's sorted out because this has been going on for a little while. And then you respond back saying, it will be sorted out, or it's still not sorted. And I'm being there saying, I'm thinking of you. And so I'm giving you compassion and saying that I'm thinking of you, especially as it's so cold here. And without the heating, I would be struggling. So I don't know how you're coping. And that's what makes me think of you. But, sometimes that bit of compassion is all you need. And I do feel that when people are offering solution, it might be that they're coming, I would imagine fully that they're coming from a place of compassion, of empathy, that they want to make sure that you get it sorted. And they're saying these things because they think that you may not have thought of them. And I don't feel that they're doing it maliciously or making you feel that you haven't got a clue. I think it's just that it's our human instinct to want to be helpful, to not want to hear that somebody else is suffering. But it is very hard just to say, I'm thinking of you, I'm trusting that you get this sorted out soon. And it's really easy to make it all about you solving their problem, because that's the human thing, that's the ego stepping in, and not as easy to step back and say, how are you? Are you okay? Are you coping? I've resisted from saying to you, maybe you need to invest in some thermal underwear, because that's just the thing that we would do to be thoughtful. But I know that's not helpful.
Well, I certainly appreciate your friendship and all of your concern. And I think for anybody who's out there, if you have an opportunity to be listening at an elevated level and someone's sharing their issue, after they're finished, you can ask permission. Caroline, I've been through something similar. Would you be open to hearing how I dealt with it? No, I wouldn't. Yes, I would. And then you're giving the person an option. So I think that makes for a much better dynamic instead of one person getting frustrated, because this happened to me recently. Someone called about the heat, and I appreciated the fact they were calling to see how I was doing, and then just started lecturing me. They think you're an idiot. They're playing you for a fool. I'm like, really? Have you been in touch? Did they tell you this specifically? I don't think I'm actually that important with all the tenants that they have. But this person was getting themselves so annoyed and finally said, I can't talk to you because you're not doing the right thing, and hung up on me. And I thought, okay, how's that going to sit with you for the rest of your day? Because I'm not taking that on board, because that's your stuff. That has something to do with that person. So we've actually run out of time. I love having this conversation with you. We could do it every day. So, Caroline, how can you help people, and who is a good client for you? People all over the world going through all kinds of problems and challenges. They need someone like you to help them. Tell us more.
Thank you, Dr. Jacalyn. Yes, I don't know where this time flies. It goes very quickly. Well, I help people break through the patterns that create their repeating stress, the way that they experience it, whether it's physical, emotional, mental, or behavioral. And our stress appears in our environment, in our home, in our work. And if you are constantly complaining about one type of issue, or a situation that keeps arising, or that there's a drama from one drama to the next, there will be something that's underlining, that's how the stress is appearing in your life. And so it'll be feeling that it's detached from you, and yet you're in it, you're part of it. And this is part of the blueprint of what creates the stress, where we're detached from the experience of dealing with our own emotions and feelings about situations. So I help people break through the patterns of the repeating patterns that create their stress, and whether it be a regular thing, a relationship, a bereavement, whether it's something that's become difficult in terms of a sickness, an illness for yourself or for a family member or a loved one. It's whatever is creating your discontent, your stress within your own personal world. And so I help people break through what's causing their repeating patterns by identifying the root cause using root cause therapy and chakra psychology. I also talk to teams within corporates and help them from an educational perspective, understand different aspects of workplace issues, conflict, anger management, team dynamics, things that are causing stress within their own working environment as well as their personal lives. And I do lunch and learn team talks. A good client for me is somebody either from corporate human resources to come in and do team talks, whether it's online or in person. I'm in the UK based, and also online, in person, in terms of individuals that are looking for help with situational stress that they are experiencing. You can reach me on nomorestress at live.co.uk or call, if you're international, +44. If you're local, 07523 120 189. Also follow me on LinkedIn and Facebook and message me there if that's better, if that's easier for you. Follow me because I have a good following on both platforms, and you can reach out to me and I am sure that I can help you bust your stress.
Thank you, Caroline. Thank you for being part of our program today and for all the education, awareness, and professionalism that you bring to our platform.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure, and it always goes too quickly. Yes. Thanks, Dr. Jacalyn. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. All right, we are going to be going on to our next program, but what I'd like to leave you with is there's a lot of hatred on social media. I personally today have unfollowed 10 people. Yesterday, unfollowed more people. I don't like the negativity. I mean, we all know what's going on and we all have our feelings and we're all entitled to our feelings wherever it is you live in the world. But treating people with respect and kindness is so important. Taking that anger and doing something with it. You know, I work out every day, multiple times a day, and I put my anger there. Find something that you can do with your anger instead of taking it out on someone else. And by the way, when you put all of your anger in social media, people don't like it. I mean, and then people who are commenting and then they're putting negative comments and just over and over. It's just, I don't know. There's no place for it in my world. So think about how all that anger and frustration is impacting your life. So just a selfish plug, I'm the author of this book, Mastering the Power of Elevated Listening, as well as 15 other books. And this book has 2 quizzes that you can take to test your own listening skills. It has case studies. It also has testimonials. And I really find in the presentations that I do and the speeches that I do, people are getting a lot out of this book. So you can get it over on Amazon. You can get it on our websites, drjacalyn.com, usaglobaltv, and radio.com. All right. Thank you for being here. As we close out, we're going to take a look at a couple of clips that are going to help you identify if you have challenges when it comes to listening, because we all have had some at times. And by working on our listening skills, you're giving somebody a gift. Here we go.
In a world full of noise, misunderstandings, and interruptions, master the art of listening with Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck. Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck is the listening mentor of USA Global TV and Radio and the Amazon #1 best-selling author of Mastering the Power of Elevated Listening. Elevate your listening. Elevate your life. Join a global learning experience in person or via Zoom. Reserve your spot today. usaglobaltv.com/book-your-session or drjacalyn.thinkific.com. Join Dr. Kerbeck's listening courses or hire her to unlock deeper connections and authentic conversations. Have you ever felt unheard? Like your words float into a void, leaving you invisible and disconnected? How about feeling judged? When assumptions overshadow your truth, leaving you misunderstood and defensive. And then there's that moment when someone offers solutions you never asked for. dismissing your feelings and leaving you more frustrated than before. It doesn't have to be this way. Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck, the listening mentor, understands. She's here to help you reclaim your voice, build stronger connections, and create meaningful conversations that inspire understanding and mutual respect. Through her groundbreaking books, online and in-person courses, and interactive workshops, you'll learn how to navigate life's most challenging interactions. Discover the power of elevated listening and transform how you communicate. Master setting boundaries and asking permission to protect your peace. Learn to recognize and release judgment, fostering empathy and true connection. Dr. Kerbeck also offers personalized coaching, one-on-one or group sessions designed to fit your unique needs. Whether in person or virtually on StreamYard, her guidance will empower you to thrive. You don't have to struggle alone. The path to deeper connections and better relationships start here. Visit drjacalyn.com or usaglobaltv.com. Join a global community of empowered listeners and transform your life, one meaningful conversation at a time. Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck is the listening mentor. Start your journey today.